Okay, welcome to this podcast. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, I'd like to start right off. Do you think education has come a long way from when you were a student to now?
I would say from one perspective, yes, because people know that the old kind of education is not really working much.
Mm-hmm.
But then in terms of action, when I look into the way things are being done, the kinds of expectations that teachers and parents have, I wouldn't say much has changed.
Do you think that we're still too focused on the bookish and the grades and the numbers instead of, the practicality of things?
In a majority of cases, yes. Probably because if we look at our country, those students who are now parents and in the middle age now, some of them did really well simply because they studied well in school and performed well in exams. So maybe still the same hangover is there and people are not able to get rid of this mentality. And yes, a huge pressure on scores and grades still.
Do you feel like you have done something in that regards to bring change to the system?
One thing I have done, of course, with my team here is a lot of discussion around this area. How do you define success? How are things changing and what is the likelihood of the future? By the time our little kids get into their career independently, how is the world going to be like? What kinds of skill sets, mindsets will be necessary to do well at that time? And I have also put my teachers into reflection of their school life. And that way we can realize, lots of things that we did at school or I'm doing with these kids at school are not making sense. So let's think of some alternatives then. So this is going okay.
But then how do you think you can change the minds? Because for teachers, you're their superior, so you can just be like, okay, we need these changes. But for the parents, they're still stuck to their old beliefs. And how do you get through to their parents?
That's what, as I was saying, it's all communication basically. And I'm lucky that in my school, I've got quite a good team. By that what I mean is I have HR department, I have relationship department, I have ECA department, operations department. So I don't need to take care of repair and maintenance or water issue or electricity issue. I just can tell them and the job is done. So that way I have time to focus on the main agenda, which is student development. Hence I find time to talk with parents a lot. And when I talk with them, I listen to them a lot. And I bring in my stories. I bring in things that are happening around. And I also share how smart the kids are at the moment and the kinds of challenges, the different kinds of challenges they are facing. And somewhere we converse our ideas. And it's working fine. I'm pretty happy with what's going on.
But do you think that when, some certain parents are really stubborn, so what is a strategy that you use to get around something like that?
It is difficult. And some parents are stubborn as in now when they're having a conversation with me, they think it's okay. And again, after some time, that same mindset pops up. In one or two occasions, I have even told them that time has changed and this school has decided to change already. So for 2, 4, 5, 10 parents will not come back. Okay? And they have the option of going to a school. And I feel so sorry for the kids. But then for me now, a decision has been made and we are not going to turn back.
Do you feel like this ideology is accepted by other principals that you come in contact with?
By words, yes. Lots of principals I meet with, they are my friends, not only in Kathmandu and not only limited to private schools. Any kind of schools where basically fees are very low. And parents come from a very underprivileged background. So most principals, I'm sure, definitely know that the traditional set of examination-based, parroting-based learning is not going to help. And we are not doing enough justice to our children by repeatedly doing the same thing. This is a noun is a word to name places things and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they know this is not working. But then the alternative programs and the resources it requires, the training, resources not only in terms of tangibles, but also in terms of intangibles that it requires, the preparedness. So because of that, probably things haven't changed as much.
Okay, and what do you feel like you've done in BVS particularly to prepare your children more than just the grades and exams?
One thing is, I can tell you direct changes that have taken place. We've removed examination, so to say, formal examination system. We have removed top 10 or first, second, third system, especially until grade 8. But then that doesn't mean we've stopped assessing students and giving feedback or reporting to parents. So we have a more, in a way, broader and regular way of assessing and reporting to parents. So that's in terms of assessment. And the moment assessment changes, it reflects on learning, or they have a reflective relationship. And in terms of learning, we focused so much on soft skills and interpersonal skills development, where rather than content that the teacher delivers, the activities in and outside the class. And I promote taking students out a lot. So these are some of the changes that have taken place, and things are going okay.
Do you feel the power you hold as a principal? Like, for example, back in my school, when the principal enters, the entire classroom just shushes. It's because the principal is coming.
I can relate to that,
Do you feel that power you exude?
It doesn't matter how hard I try not to exude that power. Probably people do feel it. But in terms of how I'm doing it myself, I'm careful, actually. I'm careful about being an individual rather than the principal. And because we are implementing a lot of changes and expanding physically also, by number also at school, I need to be talking to teachers and other non-academic staff and parents a lot. So because I talk a lot, I think I have developed a habit of listening to them. Now, to be honest with you, maybe I have a very strong perspective on making a change. But my strategy is that I do listen to people, tolerate diversified ideas, and slowly connect it with my perspective. And so far I've been able to convince people a lot.
But don't you think that more applies to teachers, but like not your students? Because the students probably can't see that you're listening more, and they cannot. It's more of an invisible power. So what do you think you're doing to connect to the children?
See, there are lots of things that are just felt indirectly. And the openness that I think I have brought in to school between me and my students, the way I talk to them. One example, it's nothing wrong there, but when I ever go to a student's class, I ask them not to stand up at all. So nowadays, when I go to a class, they don't stand up because I consider that as a disturbance to what's going on already. I have greeted students before they have greeted me many times. I have really listened to stories, talked to them in the hallway or on the ground, anywhere I like. So because of these different examples here and there, and plus for the fact that when there are rules that are not making sense, for example, the length of hair. So I have said what grows out on your skull is not as important as what you grow in your brain. So grow your hair, but then be careful about your behavior and the language that you use. And so they see me as a little different person and principal, I guess, who really tries to do meaningful things and experiments new ideas, I think. So I feel, now this is very difficult to evaluate myself on their perspective, but I feel that they find me pretty open.
in the speaking of the dress code and the
Yes.
uniform and everything,
Yes.
even back in my days where we used to have a barber on site, we used to have nails measured with steel rulers, and it's like come out of the line because the nails can't be longer, and it made no sense even back then. It's like, what does that have to do with how much I can study?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am also particular about students' hygiene because this relates to your personality, and if you cannot take care of yourself, how can you do well for yourself or anybody else? So hygiene is there, but then when it comes to length of hair, as long as it's decent enough, so I have exercised a lot of tolerance or freedom there. In terms of uniform too, at this state, because we are at a transition, at school we have the rule where students need to come in uniform, and it has lots of rationale behind it there. But probably in the future, I will lift this rule of same uniform also, because it doesn't matter how hard you try from outside, students are unique and they are different. So the clothes that you wear cannot just try and make them same.
So, because all these things, they differ from teacher to teacher. Even back then, we used to have some teachers that were more open and some teachers that are really stubborn and will enforce really old tactics. So when you were hiring a teacher, what kind of qualities do you look for? Because you're looking to bring about this transitional phase, as you say.
One is adaptability, basically. And what I know, you brought a very important point here. What I know for sure is that if all teachers don't agree at least on the fundamental ways of doing things or principles, then things won't work at all. This efficacy, when it comes from common opinions, it's very important. But then things might change. What is right now may not be right after 2 years. So adaptability is something I look for in any new person that I would be hiring. And that's something I keep talking about with my existing teachers also.
In the same vein, you've said that patience is just key when dealing with children of this age, because they're going to revolt and you're going to have to be the adult that is patient enough to teach them. But how do you teach patience to your teachers?
Now, it is environment, it is experience, it is so many other things than just the teacher that can teach. And patience, to me, patience is not something that should be directly taught to students. It is something that teachers and parents should practice, basically. And how you practice patience first is by lengthening your time to react, or by reducing overreacting, basically, right? And in a lot of discussions and workshops and meetings that I have had with both parents and teachers, I have probably always put patience as number one key, because for a child, when the child is trying something, maybe for a parent it might be not following the rule or not behaving well. But for the child is trying something. So when a child is trying something, and if somebody who knows a little more comes and intervenes there, you don't know even this much. See, 2 into 3, 6 right now. No? So if any adult does that, so it turns the child's mind into lazy. Why should the child think and try again? So these are some sorts of examples and discussions I keep having with my teachers and parents, and I think it is working slowly.
You talked about adaptability and futuristic education in Nepal. So if I was to ask you, what are 2 changes that need to come about in the education system, what do you think?
I would like to borrow the same word, adaptability, again. We don't know what the world is going to be like. From technology perspective and from other scientific development perspective, we keep making predictions, and there are also predictions that the humanity might not be there for very long. But then one thing is for sure, that things are not going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
There might be crisis, there might be agriculture, food crisis, there might be big disaster.
Yeah.
The life may not be as comfortable as we have at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to definitely imbibe this adaptability as one of the core skills to be taught.
Yeah.
One. So two, in the education system, what I would like to change is the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I can bring it from psychosocial perspective also. The relationship. Basically these three parties and the entire community. The three parties are parents,
Mm-hmm.
teachers and students. I see one party blaming the other so much.
Mm-hmm.
Parents blame teachers and students.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers blame students and parents.
Mm-hmm.
Students blame the both,
Yeah.
the rest of them.
Yeah.
But then hearing out each other's concerns and really working on the relationship between these three parties
Mm-hmm.
and among
Mm-hmm.
parents, students, teachers, and bringing it out to the societal relationship would work so much on the emotional development also.
Mm-hmm.
So these two words, back to your question again,
Yeah.
adaptability and relationship are two things I would want to
Yeah.
lay emphasis on.
Yeah. You know, as a parent and also a principal, do you feel like you have a more open view of the education system? As you can see, as a parent, you can see how they're reacting to
Yeah.
their education, and as a principal, you can have the teacher's side of the view. Do you feel like it gives you a more open idea into the system?
Yes, as long as I don't have a very fixed mindset,
Uh-huh.
of course, yes.
Yeah.
And I have also done joint parent-teacher meetings with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I've come across lots of ideas. For example, one is basically, as the principal, I talk a lot of ideal situations.
Mm-hmm.
Parents can't be teachers. Teachers can't be parents.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning parents have their roles and teachers have their roles.
Yeah.
But then parents have their own practical situations.
Yeah.
So they don't have the time.
Yeah.
Teachers have their own practical situations. They don't have very few students to deal with.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how something can be done there.
Yeah. So to find an intersect between parents and teachers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Time issue, number issue.
Yeah. Okay. So as a principal, you're often at the top, right? And it's like for the students, it's a mostly invisible job. They have no idea what you're doing to benefit them. And your teachers probably see you as a superior, so someone to look up to. So do you find that this is a lonely job?
From one perspective, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But then in my case,
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely calm down and look at myself as a normal human being.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, because lots of changes are happening,
Mm-hmm.
so my job at this moment requires me to do a lot of brainstorming with people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do anything that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely go to teachers, students, parents, and a lot of people around. We have principals from other schools with whom also we interact. And that way, I would say on a daily basis, more than 60, even 70% of the time, I'm interacting with people a lot,
Yeah.
with me on the ground. And at times when a security officer guard talks to me, I still listen to that person very carefully. So this has not given me any feeling of loneliness, I'd say.
And at the end of the day, when you go to the mirror, do you think you see yourself as a principal, as an educator? Like, what do you see when you go home?
Yeah, like I was saying, I think one thing is now home. So I think I look at myself firstly as the parent.
Mm.
What I have understood and reconfirmed it more than 100 times maybe is that, especially until your kids, meaning in general any kid,
Mm-hmm.
are 12 years or younger,
Yeah.
it is the parents who make the most influence on them, not the teachers, not anybody else.
Mm.
And after 12, it could be peers and so many other people, including teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at myself as a parent first,
Yeah.
then as a learner, I would say, I believe in learning and developing a lot.
Yeah.
And I know that a principal can make a very big impact, and coincidentally somehow I am the principal, and I look at myself as the principal from the viewpoint that as the principal I can make a very big change, at least in my school community of about 1,500 students and their families, and 240 staff members and probably even their families. So yeah, that feeling does come, but not too often.
Do you feel like what you're doing is enough, like the impact on these people? Because like you said, the more stubborn parents, they will go somewhere else, so you won't be able to reach the people that are not as open-minded, right?
True.
Yeah.
But I have convinced myself with the fact that I cannot change what is not possible.
Okay.
and this is one way to help keep me going. It definitely gives me a boost. But then one thing I'm happy about is maybe 3% of the parents have been stubborn and not been able to be accommodated here.
Yeah.
But then there were similar to those lines, probably 20-30% of them who've been convinced, meaning they have understood the value and they have stayed here. So I look at this
the bigger picture,
the bright side.
Yeah. Thank you very much, because I feel like even for me, I've seen the principal figure as this authoritative figure, so even for me I got a more fresh perspective into this. Thank you very much for doing this podcast.
A great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.